The device beeped again, displaying the final verdict. Ronan stared at it, then his eyes, once full of love, found mine across the room. The confusion that had plagued him for months evaporated, replaced by a chilling clarity. My carefully constructed world shattered in that gut-wrenching instant. It all started with a bottle of hickory barbecue sauce. The smell of grilled chicken and steamed broccoli filled our kitchen. It was the sterile, joyless scent of Ronan's new life, a life I was no longer truly a part of. My secret ingredient, however, smelled like our old one. A nostalgic, smoky sweet promise of everything he was so desperately trying to leave behind. With the practiced stealth of a saboteur, I reached to the very back of the pantry, my fingers closing around the familiar curves of a bottle of hickory barbecue sauce. Its label, a cheerful cartoon pig, felt like an old friend winking at me. Just a year ago, Ronan and I were a team, an unbreakable unit built on a foundation of shared indulgences. Our sanctuary was the worn-in groove on our sofa. Our ritual was the Friday night pizza, the grease staining the box as we argued over the last slice. We were champions of competitive lounging. Our fuel was craft beer and bags of kettle-cooked chips, and our trophy was discovering a new gritty crime drama to binge-watch until our eyes burned. We were soft, yes, but we were happy, perfectly in sync in our cozy, comfortable world. Then came the 6-month checkup. The doctor, a man with the lean physique of a marathon runner, didn't mince words. Pre-diabetic, he'd said, and the word landed in the sterile room like a grenade. For me, it was a warning. For Ronan, it was a declaration of war. The man I loved was replaced overnight by a stranger, a zealot who worshipped at the altar of my fitness pal. He weighed his food with the precision of a chemist, spoke a new alien language of glycemic index and fasted cardio, and viewed our old life with the disdain of a reformed sinner. He was shrinking, hardening, transforming into a chiseled effigy of a man I barely recognized. The pride that radiated from him as he showed me his new, lower blood sugar readings felt like an unspoken judgment on me, the woman who still craved the life he'd forsaken. He wasn't just losing weight, he was shedding us. The easy intimacy of sharing a pint of Cherry Garcia was gone, replaced by his solitary post-workout protein shakes that smelled faintly of chalk and despair. So I started my quiet rebellion. A generous squeeze of that forbidden sauce, a river of dark, sugary rebellion, artfully drizzled and mixed into his perfectly portioned meal of chicken and vegetables. It was a ghost of our past, a whisper of the joy he'd walled off. In the twisted logic of my lonely mind, it wasn't sabotage, it was an act of love. A gentle, desperate attempt to remind his body, if not his mind, of what it felt like to be happy, not just efficient. I was just giving him back a little taste of us. He never noticed, of course. He'd just sigh, frustrated that his progress was so inexplicably slow, and I would wrap my arms around him, feigning sympathy, all while hiding the sweet, smoky secret on my breath. My campaign of culinary sabotage escalated from a quiet protest to a daily mission. I became a master of deception. A little extra olive oil in the pan, a spoonful of full-fat Greek yogurt instead of the non-fat variety in his smoothies, a handful of sugar-coated cranberries tossed into his clean salad. Each addition was a small, defiant victory. I'd watch him meticulously log his meals into his app, a picture of discipline, and feel a sick, triumphant thrill knowing the numbers on his screen were a lie. His frustration became my daily entertainment. "I just don't get it, Jen," he'd mutter, staring at the bathroom scale as if it had personally betrayed him. "I'm doing everything right. I'm hitting my macros, I'm killing it in the gym, but the scale won't budge, and my post-meal glucose is still all over the place." He looked so lost, so defeated, and a part of me, the part that still loved him, ached for him. But another, more dominant part felt a perverse sense of validation. "See," it whispered, "this new life is hard, it's not worth it. Come back to me." I played the role of the supportive, bewildered wife with Oscar-worthy dedication. "Maybe you're stressed, honey. I read that cortisol can make you retain water. Or could the chicken be to blame? You know how they pump them with saline solution?" I was his chief comforter and his primary saboteur, a twisted duality that I justified as a desperate measure to save our marriage. The real architect of his new life was Dax, our personal trainer. Dax was everything I wasn't, lean, disciplined, and relentlessly positive. Ronan worshipped him. Their conversations were peppered with terms I didn't understand, a secret club from which I was explicitly excluded. One evening, I overheard Ronan on the phone with him, his voice tight with anxiety. "I swear, Dax, I'm not cheating. I'm bringing my lunch to the gym next Tuesday. You can watch me eat it and we can test my blood sugar right there. We have to figure this out." "It's driving me insane." A cold spike of fear shot through me. A public test in front of Dax, the high priest of his new religion. My deceptions were designed for the privacy of our home, not the bright, unforgiving lights of a fitness center. But the fear was quickly suffocated by a wave of resentment. He was going to Dax to solve a problem that was happening in our home. He trusted a stranger more than he trusted me. The thought stung, and in that moment, my quiet rebellion hardened into a reckless resolve. Fine, he wanted a test. I'd give him a result he'd never forget. Tuesday arrived with a sense of grim inevitability. The morning air was thick with a tension only I could feel. As I prepared Ronan's lunch, my hands moved with an almost ceremonial slowness. I laid out the grilled chicken breast, the steamed broccoli, and the half cup of brown rice in his pristine glass container. It looked like a picture from a health magazine, bland, virtuous, and utterly joyless. Then I reached for the barbecue sauce. The night before, Ronan had turned down my suggestion for a movie night, opting instead for an early bedtime to be fresh for his workout. The petty sting of that rejection fueled my actions. I didn't just add a drizzle, I added a deliberate, defiant pool of the sugary, smoky liquid, mixing it in until the bland chicken glistened with a treacherous sheen. The drive to the gym was silent. Ronan was focused, a coiled spring of nervous energy, rehearsing his food log in his head. I sat in the passenger seat, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, a counterfeit smile plastered on my face. I was both the arsonist and the first responder, a spectator at a fire I had started. I watched from a bench as he and Dax went through their routine. Every grunt, every strained muscle, every drop of sweat was a testament to his dedication. He pushed himself harder than I'd ever seen, his eyes constantly flicking towards the small cooler bag that held his lunch. He was a man on a mission, desperate to prove his innocence to the one person whose opinion now seemed to matter more than anyone else's. When the workout was finally over, the atmosphere shifted. It felt less like a gym and more like a laboratory. Dax wiped down a bench, and Ronan reverently placed the cooler bag on top of it. He unzipped it and presented the glass container to Dax like a sacred offering. "See, Dax," he said, his voice earnest and pleading. "Chicken, broccoli, brown rice, exactly like you said. No sauces, no oils, nothing, it's perfectly clean." My throat went dry, my smile felt like a brittle mask about to crack. From across the room, the scent of hickory smoke, my signature crime, seemed to mock me. Ronan was so proud, so certain. He was about to present the evidence of his devotion, completely unaware that I had already tainted the sample. This was it, the grand tribunal. Under Dax's watchful, professional gaze, Ronan ate the meal I had prepared. He took his time, chewing each bite thoroughly as if to prove that he was even consuming it correctly. He was a model student, eager and transparent. While he ate, he and Dax discussed potential theories, slow metabolism, a hormonal imbalance, maybe even a faulty glucose meter. I sat there, a silent observer, my blood turning to ice in my veins. The casual, clinical nature of their conversation made my deception feel even more monstrous. After the last bite, Ronan carefully wiped his mouth, sealed the container, and set a timer on his phone. 1 hour, he announced. Let's see what it says. The 60 minutes that followed were the longest of my life. The ambient noise of the gym, the clanking of weights, the whir of treadmills, the generic pop music faded into a dull roar. All I could hear was the frantic, panicked thumping of my own heart. Ronan and Dax stretched, talking quietly. I tried to look casual, scrolling aimlessly through my phone, but my thumb trembled and the screen's light felt accusatory. The timer on Ronan's phone chimed, a shrill, piercing sound that sliced through the gym's din. The moment of judgment had arrived. Ronan walked back to the bench with a determined air. He pulled out his lancing device and the small, black glucose meter. The process was second nature to him now. The quick prick of his finger, a small bead of blood, the deliberate way he touched the test strip to it. The meter beeped as it began its countdown. 5 seconds, 4, 3, the air grew heavy, thick with anticipation. 2, 1, the device beeped again, displaying the final verdict. Ronan stared at it, Dax leaned in to look. I couldn't see the number from where I was sitting, but I didn't need to. I saw it in the sudden shift in Dax's posture, his professional curiosity curdling into disbelief. He picked up the empty meal container, brought it to his nose, and sniffed. His eyes flickered towards me for a fraction of a second, a look of dawning comprehension and utter contempt. But it was Ronan's reaction that shattered me. He didn't look at the meter again, he didn't look at Dax. He slowly lifted his head and his eyes, those beautiful, kind eyes I had fallen in love with, found mine across the room. The confusion that had plagued him for months, the frustration, the self-doubt, it all evaporated in an instant. In its place was a chilling, absolute clarity. It was the look of a detective who had just found the final, damning clue. He stood up, his movements calm and deliberate. There was no shouting, no accusation, no dramatic confrontation. Just a terrifying, surgical precision. He looked directly at me, his voice even and devoid of all emotion. "Genevieve," he said, the name sounding foreign in his mouth. "Our marriage is over, it's done. Just like my unhealthy past, it needs to be cut out of my life completely." He picked up his gym bag, slung it over his shoulder, and without a single backward glance, walked out of the gym and out of my life. I was left frozen on the bench, the entire gym a blur around me. The silence Ronan left in his wake was more deafening than any scream. Dax, his face a mask of disgust, picked up the empty glass container and dropped it into a nearby trash can with a decisive thud. He didn't say a word to me, he didn't have to. His contempt was a physical force pressing down on me, suffocating me. He turned his back and walked away, leaving me utterly alone with the wreckage I had created. The drive home was a frantic, tear-fueled haze. Humiliation burned in my cheeks, followed by a surge of panicked adrenaline. This was a mistake. A horrible, overblown reaction to a stupid joke. He couldn't be serious. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers shaking as I dialed his number. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. I tried again, voicemail. A message appeared on my screen, message to Ronan failed to send. He had blocked me already. The speed, the efficiency of it was terrifying. I burst through the door of our apartment, calling his name. Ronan, this is insane, we need to talk about this. The only answer was the echo of my own voice in the unnervingly quiet space. Then I saw it. The closet in our bedroom was half empty. His running shoes were gone from their spot by the door. The bathroom counter was cleared of his things, his toothbrush, his razor, the ridiculously expensive face wash Dax had recommended. He hadn't just walked out of the gym, he had executed a pre-planned extraction. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a sentence that had been decided long ago, just waiting for the final evidence to be presented. My panic curdled into a defensive, righteous anger. How dare he? How dare he throw away years of marriage over a little bit of barbecue sauce? I needed an ally. I needed someone to validate my outrage. I called my best friend, Chloe, my voice thick with manufactured tears and indignation. He left me, Chloe, he just walked out. All because I added a little sauce to his stupid chicken. I recounted the story, carefully editing it to cast myself as the quirky, loving wife and him as the obsessive, unreasonable fitness fanatic. I waited for her to offer the soothing words I so desperately needed to hear, but there was only silence on the other end of the line. A long, heavy pause that stretched my nerves to their breaking point. When she finally spoke, her voice was cold, stripped of its usual warmth. Jen, what did you just say? She asked, her tone flat. I repeated my story, the self-pitying narrative beginning to sound hollow even to my own ears. Another pause, then the verdict. My God, Genevieve, she breathed, and there was no sympathy in her voice, only a horrified clarity. You weren't adding sauce, you were poisoning him. You were actively, deliberately sabotaging his health because you were jealous. You didn't just cross a line, you torched the entire map. He didn't leave you over barbecue sauce. He left you because he finally realized his wife was his biggest enemy. He did the right thing. Her words hit me with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs and shattering the fragile fortress of my self-deception. He was right, and now for the first time I was completely, terrifyingly alone in the truth. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in silence. My world, once filled with the comfortable rhythms of a shared life, was now an echoing void. Every corner of the apartment held a ghost of him. His side of the bed remained perpetually cold. The silence was absolute, no texts, no calls, no angry emails from a lawyer. It was as if Ronan had ceased to exist and I was being haunted by a man who was still alive. My attempts to rationalize my behavior grew weaker each day, the self-righteous anger dissolving into a thick, clinging fog of regret. Chloe's words replayed in my mind on a loop. His wife was his biggest enemy. The final confirmation of my new reality came, as it so often does, from social media. It was Dax who delivered the killing blow. He posted a photo on his Instagram, bright and sharp and painfully cheerful. It was a picture from a local 5,000 race. In the center of the frame, crossing the finish line with his arms raised in triumph, was Ronan. He looked incandescent. He was leaner than I had ever seen him, his face etched with exertion and pure, unadulterated joy. He was smiling, a wide, genuine grin that I hadn't seen in years. It was the smile of a man who was free. I stared at the photo, my thumb hovering over the screen, unable to breathe. It wasn't just the image that broke me, it was Dax's caption. So incredibly proud of my brother Ronan, it read. He finally made the tough decision to cut everything toxic out of his life and now he's flying. The future is bright. New beginnings, health alive noxcases. Everything toxic. The words weren't a subtext, they were a headline. I was the poison. I was the toxicity he had to excise to find his happiness, his health, his future. The public declaration for all our mutual friends to see was the final, brutal severance. He hadn't just left me, he had rewritten our history, casting me as the villain in his triumphant story of recovery. I finally put my phone down and looked around the silent apartment. It wasn't our home anymore, it was just my cage, filled with the ghosts of a life I had systematically destroyed. I found an old photo album, flipping to a picture from a few years back. There we were on vacation, sitting on a beach. We were both heavier, our faces rounder, sharing a comically large plate of fried seafood. We looked so happy, so easy. The regret was a physical weight pressing down on my chest. But as I stared at the smiling face of the man I loved, a bitter, ugly thought wormed its way through the remorse, a stubborn weed in the garden of my guilt. This never would have happened if he'd just never set foot in that stupid gym, and in that moment I understood. The most toxic thing in my life wasn't the barbecue sauce. It was me, and he was right to run.